Have you ever heard of the life-saving incident that shocked the whole country? The mother-in-law would kowtow to her daughter-in-law's room in the middle of the night every day. And there are words in his mouth. According to folk rumors, this old age was borrowing her wife to prolong her life. And the daughter-in-law found out, she was so frightened that she immediately moved out. This may be far more weird than you realize. Quickly shrink your little feet into your girlfriend clothes. Let's take a look at your most timid friend. The story takes place in 2010 in Jinghua village, Zhejiang. Li Zongping, the eldest son of Lao Li Tu, died unexpectedly that 2.5 years later. On the same day, that is, the day of Li Zongping's death, and his son Li Zongping died of a heart attack, Lao Li Tu suddenly felt that this was a little strange, because in retrospect, almost every 2.5 years, there will be one person in the family, and all of them will die inexplicably, and after the funeral of Li Wan's son, Lao Li Tu suspected that there must be something in this, and for a while, the family was panicked and terrified. The atmosphere permeated all corners, and everyone was afraid that the next wheel would be their own, not to mention how terrifying the scene was, and the prison would pounce on people. A master sent a head to help see. The head was very famous in that 10 miles and 8 towns. It is said that he is still the heir of Maoshan Tree. He did not speak after he arrived at home, first looked at the hole crooked in the house, and then followed. Took out another compass and began to calculate in all corners of the room, but in the blink of an eye, more than an hour passed, and I didn't see a one, so I came, just like this. I looked and calculated, and soon the morning passed, and the song people's heads ended. You stopped in a hall, but he never saw any problems at home, and he was a little anxious to accompany him out of the prison in the morning, thinking that even the master had no way to take it on his own, but what should he do, but Song Ren too. But he said that although there was no problem at home, he probably had a clue, but he still needed to ask his family a few questions, and there was no way to follow Song Ren 2 back to the house, and Song Ren 2 did not see the inn of the foreign house. The question of the house, but he asked another thing. He asked Lao Li 2 if there was still that kind of old man alive in the family, but for Song Ren 2's question, Lao Li 2 and his wife didn't think about it even if they wanted to break their heads. There is such a number one person, but what the head of some people said is very sure of Lao Li. The head had to think about it carefully, but the two of them did not find an old man who met such conditions for a long time, and then the grandson Li Shukuan on the side suddenly remembered that there was a grandmother in the family, who seemed to be very old. It's big, but because of the conflict between the two families a few years ago, I don't move around anymore and I don't have any contact with that grandmother at all. It is said that they have already moved to other provinces for several years, if they are still alive. The old lady is really more than 100 years old. As soon as Song Ren 2 heard that there was a play, he immediately asked in detail, and the old lady and his wife counted it, and this old lady was still their aunt, but she hadn't moved for too long, basically. I forgot that there was such a relative, but for the matter of them moving away, Song Ren 2 was very curious. Could it be that they hadn't come back for so long, and the old Li 2 on the side thought about it carefully, and the old lady was really a little bit okay. She would come back once every 2.5 years, but she only went to her old house, never dealt with others, and when she heard it, she understood on the spot that the problem should be here, so she proposed to go to the old lady's old house. Go and see that it is related to people's lives. Lao Li 2 did not dare to slack off, and immediately took the head to the old house of the aunt and grandmother. The old house has been almost empty because it has not been inhabited for many years, and as soon as Song Ren 2 entered the house, he took out the bomb and started it. Forget it, but this time it was very fast. Song Ren 2 quickly pointed out that a piece of ground in the house looked like a pit that had been backfilled, so he let his brain dig it out, and Song Ren 2 didn't dare to disobey as soon as Song Ren 2 spoke. Li Shukuan immediately found tools and dug up, and sure enough, it didn't take long to dig out a small black blanket covered with a red cloth from there. Song Ren 2 picked up the small black blanket from the pit, and his eyes were solemn and pointed at him for a long time. I lifted the red cloth on it, opened the blanket, and saw that there were a few walnuts in it, and those walnuts were obviously not put in at the same time. Some were still fresh, but most of them were already a little rotten, blackened and loose. The head took out a walnut and pointed out that this is a very evil false life tree, which is a kind of evil art that uses blood attendants and bull-back sheep hands to exchange his own false life. Lao Li 2 was anxious on the spot when he heard it. It turned out that his son's death order had a hidden secret. Didn't you lose your conscience? Song Ren 2 continued, saying that the old lady would pick on the same tree. 2 peach pits were buried in the place where the old lady was buried. It is to carry another walnut, which will be engraved with the name and birth date of the blood relatives. This method will kill a blood relatives who have not finished their life every time, but they will also give themselves 2.5 years of life. At the same time, on the other hand, the old lady suddenly died on the day the jar was dug up, and when she died, her skin was shriveled, as if all the blood had been drained.